Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donahue and Sonia Mansfield talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy.
Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donahue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the amazing Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. We are the podcast that talks about creeps from the past to the present. Today, we are talking about a present-day creep who served his time. I'm making that very clear. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be very careful about everything we say in this episode because this person kind of terrifies me. But just to let you know, at the top of the show, you can follow us on Facebook. We do have a basic Facebook page. That's where people go to complain about our language. Yes, we use salty language, and you do have to tell you ahead of time, even though it says so in the rating. But anyway.
Yeah, fucking deal with it.
So if you want to interact with us, and the place we're most interactive right now is in our Facebook group. So you just type in What a Creep Podcast group, ask to join. You do have to answer a few questions. Basically, you're not going to be an asshole. And then you can come and join the fun. And we do just talk about news and pop culture and things like that. We're on Twitter as long as Twitter exists at CreepPod, because somebody had What a Creep for 10 years and never used it.
Creep.
We're also on Instagram, What a Creep Podcast. And Sonia, are we on Threads at What a Creep Podcast?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. You can find us on all the things.
Very, very exciting. Also, we have an old-timey email, whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. You can send us your suggestions there for creeps and for non-creeps. Or if you would like some stickers, we do have some groovy stickers. Tell us your address. Give us your address. We will drop them in the mail for you ASAP. And I have a bunch going out today. So those of you that have been asking, they're coming. So, noise. Sonia, do you want to talk to them about the website?
Yes, you can go to whatacreeppodcast.com, and it's everything you ever wanted to know about our show, but we're afraid to ask, as links to all of our past episodes. And in each of those posts are show notes, because we source every single thing we do. We're not making this stuff up. It is all public record. And if you're looking to do a deeper dive on any of our creeps, that's a great way to do it. So go ahead and check that out. You can also... there's a link to our merch shop. That's where I was going with that. You can go and get some merch. We have t-shirts and tote bags, all kinds of fun stuff with our logo and things that say "Not a Creep" on it, whatever you want. There's also a link somewhere in there to our Substack. So if you want to sign up for our Substack, please do. And there's a link to our Patreon page. You want to tell them about that, Margot?
Yes, I do want to tell them about that, Sonia. We have our first 8 seasons up there. Realized by one of our avid listeners that I didn't have my Louis B. Mayer. And I made sure to correct that problem. That was from season 5, and that's a really fun one. And we're going to be talking about movie studios next week, so maybe you'd want to listen to that one if you're on the Patreon page. Patreon, and I want to thank Crystal, Julia, Shane, and Heather, all of you, for joining us.
Ooh, thank you.
It just helps us with the cost for the services for the news and the software and all the things. And like Sonia said, we pay for our sources. We believe in paying writers and people that do the work. That's how we roll.
Hint. A little hint to next week's episode, y'all.
Yeah, no kidding. And we also put out a bonus episode every couple of weeks. So thank you once again for those of you that join our Patreon page. But look, if money's tight, we totally get it. If you could just leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, 5 stars would be amazing. Or
helps us find our people.
It does help us find our people. And also on Spotify, I've learned how to leave questions and polls in there if you listen to us on Spotify. Good pods, wherever you are. That would be amazing. All right, Sonia.
Yes.
I think we've gone through everything.
I think so.
All right. Do you know who Anthony Pellicano is?
The name is familiar to me.
All righty. That's because possibly you saw a TV documentary from the New York Times and Hulu, and it was called Sin Eater.
possibly
Sin
saw
Eater.
that. Yes.
Yes. And it was on, like I said, Hulu. New York Times does these amazing documentaries. Anthony Pellicano was a private investigator to the stars.
To the stars, baby.
All those stars in heaven. That's who he was a private investigator for. He was known as a Hollywood fixer. I've never seen the show Ray Donovan, but supposedly he is one of the inspirations for that character in that series.
Okay.
He's somebody that all of the studio heads knew about, the big time entertainment lawyers, celebrities. We're talking, he worked with everyone from Tom Cruise to Michael Jackson, Chris Rock, Courtney Love, Sandra Will Carradine, ex-wife of Keith Carradine, Linda Fiorentino, she's in this story somewhere, Steven Seagal, John DeLorean. You going back in a DeLorean? I forget the line now from Back to the Future.
You built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
Out of a DeLorean? Yes, we're going to be talking about all of that. Let's get started. He, like I said, he just got out of jail in 2019 for all kinds of things like illegal possession of explosive, firearms, and a grenade. He's also been indicted for racketeering and wiretapping.
Cool.
He's a busy little beaver. Anthony J. Pellicano, actually it was Pelican. He added the O later for flavor.
Oh, interesting. Oh, are there sources for this episode, by the way?
Thank you, Sonia. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Whew. All right, let me get to this. Today's episode.
We don't want to piss this guy off. We want to listen.
Let me just say this again. Anybody in his universe who hears about this, everything we have is sourced. We are not making up anything, and I'm not making any allegations about anything else, okay?
Yes.
This is the shit that people know. All right, Anthony Pellicano, whose New York Times documentary Sin Eater is available for streaming on Hulu, was a high-profile fixer who made life horrifying or amazing, depending on whether you were his client. Hint, for $25,000, he would bend a lot of rules to help you and your cause. We're going to talk about his unusual career, why he ended up being sentenced 15 years in federal prison, and who enabled him to succeed as long as he did. Sources for this episode: Daily Beast, Daily Mail, Hollywood Reporter, Pop Sugar, Today's Show, other Hollywood Reporter, The Sun. I have 2 Hollywood Reporter articles. The Sun UK, Vanity Fair, Biography, Newsweek, The New Yorker, Los Angeles Times, 2 articles from Variety, New York Post, Los Angeles Magazine, and the link to the New York Times Sin Eater, The Crimes of Anthony Pellicano.
You've done zero research.
I didn't do shit. Okay. Anthony grows up in Chicago. He's born 1944. His father leaves him. He has a brother and a mom. They're in Chicago when, in the 40s and 50s, there's the mob. There's like a crime scene. Everyone's in on it. The cops, everybody's, in on this whole thing. He was not raised with a father. He drops out of school when he's 16. He claims to have an IQ of like Mensa level.
We all claim that, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not going to deny that. You are, sir. You are from there. I'm just kidding. He served some time in the military as a teenager, and that's where he learned cryptography and cartography and all kinds of spy shit. That's what they called it, by the way. He got a medal that says spy shit on there.
Spy shit. Yeah. That's the official name.
When he gets out, it's the mid to late 60s. He's making a name for himself, and he's just not going to get a regular job. That's just not his thing. He first works for the Spiegel Company. Do you remember Spiegel catalogs? Spiegel catalogs. I don't know if that's like an East Coast thing or not, but these are just like your Sears catalog, all your other catalogs. You could buy a lot of shit from your Spiegel catalog. And people who were scofflaws and not paying their bills, they would go missing. He would go find them. It was a Chicago-based company, so he would go out and find them. His whole thing is that he can find anybody. He's relentless. He's also super duper into wiretapping, recording. He loves all the spy shows like Get Smart and Mission Impossible. Anything with gadgets, that's his bag. And he's into that way before other people think to use it for what they do. He's he works as a private investigator to find missing people. He's constantly having to get new clients. He's also constantly trying to get press for himself. This is where he adds the O to his name. He thinks it makes him sound a little splashier. He does the thing where he wears the fancy suits and the patent leather shoes. He's got his hair combed back a certain way. He has a pinky ring. He's kind of, yes, a walking stereotype.
Okay.
And he charms the shit out of people when he's not terrifying them. And I know people like this. Like, just some people they just have charisma that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got the riz.
He's got the riz.
Riz, as the kids like to say.
In his lifetime, and I said he's still alive, he's been married 5 times. He has 9 kids. So
Damn.
He believes in love. He's just, just been a bit unlucky, I guess.
Such a great way to put it. He believes in
That's how I'm
love.
going to put it.
Hopefully he believes in child support too, because that's a lot of kids.
It's a lot of kids. He's getting kind of bored. He's getting a ton of press in Chicago. He's constantly calling the papers, and he's calling. There's always a crime columnist, and he's calling.
Yes.
Do you remember Bill Curtis from A&E? He did all those shows on A&E, like Biography.
Oh yes,
that guy.
Yes.
He was on all of their shows. He was a big time anchor in Chicago, and he would go on his show sometimes. Anthony Pellicano was making a name for himself. And somewhere in 1977, let's go back in time just a bit, shall we? Doodle-doo, doodle-doo, doodle-doo. Do you know who Elizabeth Taylor is?
Yes.
Yes. Elizabeth,
She's an actress, everybody.
She was.
And she made perfume.
she made Diamonds perfume in a very famous commercial where she's got gauze on the lens. And it's like, and I'm laughing, but this woman is one of those beautiful people that ever lived. And
Fact.
And super talented and a great actress.
Yes.
She was married many times in her life as well.
Mm-hmm. She also believed in love.
She really did. She said she didn't believe in sleeping around. So that's why she got married as often as she did. Liz Taylor. She gets married when she's like 17 or 18. I think it's sometimes just to get away from the studio weirdos that were, I'm sure, making life
That
terrible
too.
for her.
Sure.
We'll get into more of those when we get out in other episodes. But she marries a Hilton. That doesn't work out. She marries a guy, Michael, whatever his name is. But they were married for a while. They had 2 kids. And it was an unhappy marriage. And so then she marries Mike Todd. Mike Todd, a Chicago guy who also splashy and big. He was Jewish. He was not Italian. He was Jewish, but he was very over the top in his presentation. Loved Hollywood movies. He produced Around the World in 80 Days. Is that
Okay. Yeah.
And he wins the Academy Award. And this is like just when he married her, like he ran on the stage, like he was so excited. He had no chill. And he was her big love in her life. She's always said that if he died in a plane crash on his way to a convention in like Carson City, and it was just outside of Albuquerque, and he was on one of those just smaller planes, and it just happens.
Yeah.
And she found out when she was filming Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Like this woman had to bury her husband and then go back on the set and then just like give this her performance of a lifetime. But she's just been through some shit. He was well loved. He was a big personality. When he died, they brought him back to Chicago and buried him next to his father. Elizabeth Taylor, it was said, Howard Hughes gave her his airplane to fly her out there so she wouldn't be bothered by the press. And when she went there, and it was a Jewish ceremony and burial, she stood out from everybody by flinging herself on top of the coffin and screaming, "Oh my God, not my Mike." She was very upset. The big rumor was that Mike Todd had given her several jewels. Everyone gave her jewels because that's Elizabeth Taylor. And this is Prime Taylor. Like you got to cough
Prime
up.
Taylor. You will give her all the jewels.
You will give it up. You will cough up.
Diamonds are forever.
Diamonds are forever, y'all. And there was a rumor that he gave her a 10-carat ring. And either he gave it to her or she gave him a 10-carat ring. Well, there's a 10-carat ring. And when Mike died, when they found his remains, you could basically put it in a little bag. There just wasn't.
Oh, so awful.
Which is terrible. So he has he's buried in the ground. He has a coffin, but they have like a huge stone. What is it called? Tombstone on top.
Yeah.
All that shit. let's flash forward. That's like 1957 or 58.
Okay.
So flash forward in 1977, and Liz Taylor is known to like go to his grave every once in a while to visit him because she misses him so much. And one day there's an Italian woman who's visiting her husband, an Italian widow, which was one of my mother's favorite things to say. Favorite descriptors, because I always wore black. She's like, "You look like an Italian widow." Like,
okay.
but there was, so on June 25th, and it would have been Mike's 68th or 70th birthday, 1977, because they think he just lied about his age. Anyway, there's this woman there visiting her husband's grave, and she notices that there's a tombstone that's knocked over and it's all dug up. And they check it, and it's Mike Todd's tombstone. And it was his birth name, which was a Jewish name. It doesn't say Mike Todd. So somebody knew that was him.
Right.
So to get to Todd's remains, I'm reading this from Chicago Magazine. Thieves first had to move a 300 to 400 pound granite tombstone about 10 feet, then dug up a 4.5 foot deep hole, unearthed the bronze coffin, then pried open the coffin's lid, smashed a glass case, and extracted the rubber bag containing Todd's remains.
Oh my God.
Police estimated the entire operation took at least 5 hours because the tombstone was so heavy, and it was at least 2 people.
What the fuck?
This makes the news, you know?
Yes.
And they're saying they can't figure out who did this or why. Like I said, this guy was decimated in this plane crash.
Yeah, why are you stealing ashes?
Why are you taking the remains? There's just nothing that makes sense about it. And then Anthony Pellicano calls Bill Curtis, who, like I said, was a big-time anchor, says, you're not going to believe this, but somebody told me where you could find the remains, and I'll tell you where it is. We'll go together. So Bill Curtis says, okay. They get a camera crew, and they find the remains. And it's just a bag they find.
Yeah.
But it's not very far from where the tombstone was. And the cops are like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, they've searched the place top to bottom because Todd's family was calling all these people like, what the hell happened? You know?
Right.
So the thinking is that, and this has never been proven, but he probably knew somebody who knew what happened, and he got the phone call. And the rumor was that they thought he was buried with this 10-carat ring, and they went through all that fucking trouble.
Wah, wah. There's nothing in here but some ashes.
So
disappointing.
Just very disappointing. Anyway, he gets all this attention for it. He gets national attention. Right. And he's like, I am too big for this joint. I got to get myself to California. So let's fast forward to the early 80s. And John DeLorean is on trial for taking bribes. It seemed like an open and shut case. I can't remember that much about it, but I just remember my parents talking about it, and he was like on camera, like accepting it, like, oh, this looks like good cocaine. Sounds good to me. It was like that level.
That's basically what I remember.
Yeah. Well. So he's going, Bert Fields, excuse me. There's a lot of Bernies and Berts and Johns, and there's a lot, like Chris's. There's lots going on here. So Bert Fields is one of the lawyers, and he's a big-time deal. He only passed away recently, well into his 90s, and he was like the lawyer, once again, for Tom Cruise, Michael Jackson, Chris Rock, everybody. All Michael Ovitz, all Jeffrey Katz, all the studio heads want Bert Fields. So Bert Fields is on the defense for this, and he hires Anthony Pellicano and says, I understand you can get information. We want as much information as you could find for us because we need to. And long story short, DeLorean is acquitted. He's found not guilty. Once again, they had video evidence of him.
They had him on tape going, this looks like plenty of cocaine. Thanks.
I could snort this for the next week or so. This is so much. Right. I'm not saying he did.
Yes.
He comes to Hollywood, and Bernie is so grateful. Bert Fields, excuse me. He's like, all right, I'll hire you to this gig and that gig. And he starts to do like what he did in Chicago. He becomes friendly with reporters. He becomes friendly with cops. And he starts meeting studio heads. And he starts meeting famous people. And he makes this very astute observation with famous people. He says they're basically like infants. And they can't handle little emergencies that pop up. They're like completely incapable. Like the average.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's not wrong. You and I both been around enough of them that like, oh my God, it's hot in here. Like, all right, we'll turn a fan on. What do you want? Like,
yeah, seriously, just watch the Smartless on the Road podcast and you'll see like Jason Bateman is like, can't handle like anything and is obsessed with food. Like celebrities are beautiful weirdos.
They're gorgeous weirdos. That's a way to put it. And he figures this out. So celebrities like Tom Cruise, let's say you're Tom Cruise and you want to divorce Nicole Kidman. You've been married for almost 10 years. It's 9 years and TikTok counting. And Scientology allegedly wants you back in the fold, full time. You record her calls and you record her calls with Tom and with other people. And they found some dirt on her. You can find dirt on anybody. The man that filmed, the director, John McTiernan for Die Hard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He had a movie he was working on where he thought the producer was doing something different from what he wanted. It wasn't even like stealing from him, but just doing things differently, like the tone of the movie and stuff. And he hired him to do that, to take this guy. And he has such this incredible system for recording calls that's all he does. He bugs people's phones. He records their calls. He also hires thugs, thuggish people to scare people. He
hires some muscle.
He hires muscle. He calls himself Sicilian. He fancies himself somebody in the like Sopranos, Godfather, that kind of mafioso type.
Go ahead and tap my phone, dude. You'd be so bored.
You'd be bored shitless to listen to me. I mean, honest to God. But that's not an
he would be like, she called her sister and talked about what she ate for lunch again. Boring.
Yeah, well, movie people are usually talking about a lot more. They're also when you're getting a divorce or you're leaving a business or you're trying to get a project off the ground, it helps you to know what your enemy, your combatant is up to. So if you're getting divorced, you would hire him. He would, track your ex-husband's, movements. He would find out. So if you're Chris Rock, let's say, and it's 2001 and you're cheating on your wife with some woman you picked up in a bar, all for real. And this woman said that you raped her and impregnated her. Chris Rock, this guy can call and say, Chris Rock knew. He gave him $25,000. And Pellicano says, you know what? For some reason, I have the police report here. You're not supposed to get them because for rape victims, you're not allowed to get them, but I have it in my hands. And it turns out and he's saying some unsavory things about the woman. And Chris Rock is like, just tell me like whatever we can use.
Yeah.
And
to intimidate her, to get her to drop her case.
Right. Yeah. This is done several times for many different people. The movie studios are doing it to one another about negotiations for movies, for contracts, for actors. There's this and he just has this system where he records all of his calls and he's obsessive about it.
Okay.
And he's constantly doing it. Courtney Love calls him and says, I need somebody. And all these people are like, I want you to just scare this person. I want to know what they're doing, but I also want you to let them know that I'm serious. But don't threaten them, but just kind of scare them.
Right.
All these and he'll just get on the phone with like, yeah, I'm going to be like a shadow. I'm going to follow them around. They're not even going to know what happened. And you're going to feel really comfortable. And he makes people feel like they're the most important person in the room.
I'm going to take care of you. Everything's going to be fine.
Right. Give me this money and I'll take care. And I'm discreet. I know everything. I have connections everywhere, and no one's going to ever find the fuck out whatever you don't want them to know. If you had an abortion when you were a teenager, if you're fooling around with somebody, if you didn't pay all your taxes 1 year or something. Like if there's something you want to hide. So he knew people at the Enquirer. He knew people just everywhere. The National Enquirer, when that was a thing.
Oh, the National Enquirer.
I kind of miss it.
It's like, it seems like simpler times.
The thing with the National Enquirer, besides being incredibly sleazy and dumb,
yes,
every once in a while they got things really correct, and especially when people were sick, because they had people in hospitals that would sell anything, any information.
Yeah, they always had the story about people getting sick or couples getting divorced before it hit mainstream media, before the term mainstream media became a slur. That is correct. They had the scoop before the more legitimate news organizations. That's what I'm trying to say.
And they also probably kept a lot of secrets, and we learned this talking about Trump. He had his own. Anyway,
his peeps.
So there's a woman that's Julia. Sorry, let me just. Oh yeah, sorry. So let me say, sorry. We're just going to fast forward to 1993, and I want to talk about Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson. We'll get to him one day. We're still kind of. He has his fans that are very loyal, and
that's a great way to put it.
Noisy, and insistent.
Yes, insistent, very persistent people
with their they're very insistent and persistent with their insistence that he's never been guilty of anything, found guilty of anything, which you can say
he's an angel
that liked to travel with children as his companions.
Yes,
and he was being. What happened was there's a young boy named Jordy who Jackson had an affinity for, crush on, whatever you want to call it. It's pretty gnarly. Holding the kid's hand in public, to go to places, going to jewelry shops and buying them jewelry. I mean, it's like really, there's kind of like disturbing stuff. And the kid had the bad luck, not only of that happening to him, which is terrible and awful, but he had parents that were just like completely gaga for Michael Jackson and completely
they were
out
groomed.
of their depth. Yes, they were groomed. And they were out of their depth in dealing with him. And the father especially was this dentist that really wanted to be a screenwriter. I mean, Hollywood is filled with these stories. Of people who just want to be directors or just want to be actors or whatever. And this guy just wanted to be a screenwriter and was constantly trying to sell screenplays. And he just thought, I'll move to Hollywood and I'll figure it out.
It's about this dentist, you see.
You see?
And he's a dentist to the stars.
Dentist to he has this film, Choppers. Famous celebrity teeth. Funnily enough, Anthony Pellicano, by the way, is totally addicted to chiclets. Like he just constantly like chomping on the thing of chiclets, like popping them in his mouth. Anyway, he accuses Michael Jackson. Well, his family sues Michael Jackson for molesting their son. And the word goes out, like Michael wants to get the dirt on these people because they're asking for a certain amount of money to stay quiet. The father is also also asking to be able to submit screenplays to me.
What a fucking asshole.
I know. It's a fucking mess. But they poor kid. I mean, and so Pellicano is on stage with Burt Fields talking to the press. And Diane Diamond, do you remember her? She was on like Current Affair. She was,
yes. She
talks about this. Like he's on stage saying like Michael's being attacked and he's a public figure and people just want to take him down and we're going to be, and their whole thing was to terrify people. If you were my enemy, if we were going against each other in court or anywhere, I'm going to take you down. I don't give a shit if it hurts anybody's fifis. Like that's not about, it's not about that. And they found enough dirt that they negotiated a settlement. And and Pellicano supposedly said it to Michael Jackson, if I find anything out I don't like, I'm going to get out of this. he's just Catholic enough to care about that.
Sure.
Right. But they make the settlement, and then it kind of goes away. And then Michael kind of, disappears for a couple of years and then comes back again. He's starting to have this comeback again. And then we'll talk about the Michael Jackson story. But supposedly he found out about 2 other boys.
Oh.
And there was a documentary about them on HBO, Finding Neverland.
Yes, or Leaving Neverland.
Sorry, that Finding Neverland's not about that at all.
No, that one stars Johnny Depp.
Who's his own little creepiness. But anyway,
yes,
he found out about those other boys and supposedly quit. And the mother talks about in the documentary how Anthony Pellicano helped them. He, like I said, he has recordings of everything.
Yes,
every single time. Doesn't matter if it's a cell phone or whatever. He could fucking record it. This guy was really smart. Let's go to 2002. And Anita Bush is a reporter for the Los Angeles Times, and she's working with the New York Times on this story. And it's about Steven Seagal.
Oh, we've talked about him.
He's a former creep. He's probably on our Patreon page. It's because it's been a while.
Yes.
That he was basically involved with the mob, and the mob was involved with making some Hollywood films, and there were people working at studios that were involved, and it was a big, messy production. And this woman, Anita, was doing her reporting, and then she said in 2002, she was going to work one day, and Anthony would find out where you lived. Anthony would find out.
Yeah, I'm sure that was so easy for him.
It was nothing. He could find out, just from the DMV or whatever. He could find out your address, and he would send people to your place to make you uncomfortable. They'd send them to your work. They'd just sit outside your home in a car and just plant themselves there. And he did this to Gary. This is the theme to Gary show.
Gary Shandling.
Shandling. Thank you. I kept on saying Seinfeld. It's Gary Shandling. His old girlfriend, Linda, who is on the show with him, she broke up with him, and then he had a fallout with Brad Gray. And then Anthony Pellicano was following Linda everywhere. So this poor woman,
oh my God, it's so creepy.
It's so creepy. There's this woman who's married a guy very quickly, and it turns out he was a multimillionaire, and then he wanted to divorce her, and she's like, fine, but it's going to cost you. And this is, so he hires Pellicano's people, and she said these people tapped her phone, followed her, and she said they didn't understand. I'm from Detroit. I'll fuck you up if you give me a hard time. And she basically shoved the guy around a couple of times. But
wow.
But these are things that happen to people. They were threatened.
Yes.
I'm not saying Pellicano did all of them, but okay. So Anita is leaving her home one day, and her car is vandalized. There's the broken windshield. There's a fish, and there's a rose stuck in the fish's mouth. And then there's a sign that just said stop. So it's just to scare her.
Yes.
So she files a police report. And then not too long after that, one day she's leaving to go to work, and she said someone assaulted her outside her home. They beat her. They hit her. They shoved her. She doesn't go into details.
Because she's probably scared.
She's terrified.
Yeah.
She's completely terrified. So she's becomes a hermit. She just stays in her home. She eventually moved, and she says, to this day, she doesn't tell her mother where she lives.
Oh,
she's that level scared. I know. Maybe I should be, but I'm not. I got your back, girl. So anyway, Steven Seagal there's this whole. So she says, Nita says, look, this guy is threatening me, and these phone calls, and it's all over these stories that I'm doing about the movie studios and the mob.
Yeah.
And so the FBI gets involved, and they raid his office, and he lets them in. This in 2002, and he's like, you can come in, but there's nothing to see. And they're like, well, what's going on there? That safe you have over there. And he opens up the safe, and he has 2 grenades. He's got homemade bombs, and he has all kinds of explosive devices. And then there's another room filled with recordings.
Yes, of course.
So the FBI are like, holy shit. So they go in and they take in all this stuff, and eventually he is convicted. He's sent to federal prison, and all these Hollywood people are freaking out.
Yeah, because all their recordings.
Yeah, because they find out, like, holy shitballs, he was recording Tom Cruise and Burt Fields talking to him. Or Tom Cruise.
I want to listen.
Or Tom Cruise just yelling at him. But little baby Tom Cruise, yeah, he's got all these people on tape.
Yes.
And the cat's out of the bag. Also, I wanted to say that, related to this, actress Linda Fiorentino from Jade, from The Last Seduction, Men in Black, the first Men in Black movie.
Yes.
It's in the mid 2000s. She's got she wants to write a script about Anthony Pellicano. She's like obsessed with the case. And she starts dating an FBI agent, and his name is Mark Rossini. And she starts saying to him, like, oh, you're in the FBI. What's that like? Do you know about Anthony Pellicano? And he says, yeah, actually, I do know, like, I've seen the case files, and it's really interesting. And she was like, oh, I'd love to see those case files sometimes. So this guy, like, let her look at them.
Oh my God. That is... Sure, Linda Fiorentino. Here, just look at these FBI case files. What could possibly go wrong?
Rossini had to resign from the FBI, and he had served for 17 years.
Hope it was worth it, dude.
And he had 12 months probation and a $5,000 fine, but he kind of lost everything after that.
That sucks. Well, you made your choice, sir.
Yes. So Pellicano is in prison until 2019. He comes out, and Burt Fields, like, creates this trust fund for him.
Please don't release any tapes.
Yes. And it's apparently had millions of dollars, like enough for him to live on.
Yeah.
But sad to say, he lost his private eye license after all of this.
Are you sad to say it?
So Anthony does not... He admits that he did illegal things.
Mm-hmm.
He admits he taped people. He gets very defensive if you tell him the names of lawyers and say, weren't they criminals too? He'll like, no, they were not. And even if they're dead, he won't say it. He makes a big deal about the fact that he says he destroyed all the tapes. I don't think he destroyed.
I don't know. That's his leverage.
I think he's bored. I think all of his friends have died or have like Brad Gray died.
Yeah.
Gary Shandling died. They weren't friends, but all these people that were associated with him, Burt Fields just died recently. Like all these people that used to know him are gone. And his just style just doesn't play anymore. I mean, with the internet, we are better at bugging ourselves and hacking people.
We're all telling on ourselves all the time.
Really, yeah, exactly. So for something of this kind of service, and also there's just like less shame to things. So that you can't get people for certain stuff. So anyway, he's living a quiet life in California. He plays up the fact that he's like Sicilian. He keeps his secrets, but I never heard anybody that was innocent. And the reporter from the Los Angeles Times would like to have a word with him about that because, like I said,
seriously,
she still lives in fear and still lives terrified. But that's our story today. This is our Hollywood creep, Anthony Pellicano. We didn't even have to do a trigger warning or anything.
Yeah, what a douchebag.
He's a total douchebag.
Good job, Margot.
Thank you.
And everything is source, sir.
Everything is in the show notes, everybody. So just like I said, you could, but it's wild to see like Mike Ovitz used him, like all these people that have so much power still wanted that thuggery
to dig up shit.
Get
Get someone to dig up some shit on people and get them to blackmail them to do what he wants them to do.
Right.
Blech. Do you want to hear about someone who's not a creep?
Yes, I do, but hold on a sec.
Okay.
Let me get my water.
Okay. Do you know who Earl Stanley Gardner is?
No.
Okay. He was a lawyer and an author. He wrote more than 100 detective and mystery novels. They've sold more than 1 million copies, but you might know him best as the author of Lawyer Detective Perry Mason.
Oh, I love the Perry Mason show, the one on HBO.
I know.
Yeah.
So Gardner was born July 17th, 1889 in Massachusetts. He was the son of a mining engineer. So he traveled a lot throughout his childhood. He eventually settled in California where he worked as a typist at a law firm. And then he learned a lot about the law while he worked there. He didn't go to law school really, but he took the bar and he passed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So then his big thing was he would take on clients who were poor, who couldn't afford lawyers. He wasn't a public defender. He was someone who took on clients that couldn't afford a lawyer, and he specialized in helping people who were immigrants to the United States. So it was a lot of Hispanic people and a lot of Chinese. And he was known for this like cross examinations. He was very good at like anticipating the tactics of his opponents. And he became like very successful doing that. And he was known as like a hero in the poor and immigrant communities of Southern California because he actually cared a lot about helping people get the best defense, or he certainly worried about people who were being bullied by the legal system, were unjustly being prosecuted. So he founded this organization, a group really called the Court of Last Resort. This was in the 1940s. And it was an organization that was dedicated to helping people who were wrongly jailed or couldn't get a fair trial. He devoted like thousands of hours to this, and he brought in like other people, like friends that he met, like in forensics and legal and investigative communities. And he was able to help all of these people by writing for pulp magazines. So he was writing more than 200,000 words a month for pulp magazines to pay for helping these people. And in those stories were Perry Mason stories. And he then like they turned into novels. So it was like The Case of the Velvet Claws and The Case of the Sulky Girl and stuff like that. I think there's 8.
Sulky or silky?
It says sulky.
Oh, I like sulky. I'm a sulky girl.
He's written a ton of Perry Mason novels. They've been adapted for radio, for television, for motion picture. It looks like I think there's 82 Perry Mason novels. There's 4 short stories. There's the long-running radio series, and of course there's the show, the one with Raymond Burr that was on in the late 50s, early 60s. And then there was another one in the 70s. There's a bunch of TV movies that ran from 85 to 95. And now there's the new Perry Mason on HBO that Margot is like super into, and I haven't started watching yet, but she really likes it. He also wrote a book based on the Court of Last Resort, and it won an Edgar Award, which is an Edgar
mystery.
Allan Poe. Yeah. And that was actually made into a show called The Court of Last Resort in the 50s. He apparently also had a lifelong fascination with Southern California, with Baja California, and he's written a ton of nonfiction travel stuff about that. And with his Perry Mason money, he bought a ranch in Southern California and I read this piece in the Atlantic from 1967, and they said that he had this soft spot for stray or injured animals.
Aww.
And that like any dog that was like stray dog that would like wander around, like he would pick them up and take them back to his ranch, and they would live on their ranch till they died of old age, basically. And it was all kinds of animals. Apparently he had a whole like a big like enclosure for like injured like squirrels and chipmunks and stuff like that too. And I was like, that's so amazing. I picked him obviously because Perry Mason's like a detective and a lawyer, but also helping all of those people. He died of cancer in 1970, and then his ashes were scattered all over Baja California, all over the chipmunks. But he sounds like a really interesting character, and that, I don't know, I love that he started writing as a way to pay for helping other people.
No, that's amazing. He's philanthropic.
Yeah, exactly. And there's in that piece in the Atlantic, they described him as he was restless, a romantic, an adventurer. He was hospitable and generous, impulsive, a hard worker, but he interested more than anything else in the individual human being, whoever he may be.
Aww.
So I thought this was a very interesting, not a creep. So it's Earl Stanley Gardner.
That's amazing. And the HBO Max remake remake of it, it's Matthew Rhys, is that his name? From The Americans.
Yeah,
he plays Perry, and he plays him as a person that served in World War I and has PTSD. But he tries to help, he struggles with that, but he also helps people. And then his Della Street in the HBO show Max, she's a lesbian. Ooh. So it has like that whole level of sexiness to it. So anyway, good job, Sonia.
Thank you.
If you enjoy the sound of our voices, and why the hell wouldn't you, we also co-host a show called Dorking Out, where we dork out about movies. Currently, we are dorking out about, what did we just talk about?
Total Recall.
I couldn't even recall it, Sonia. Hey,
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Bye. So we just talked about Total Recall, but we're going to be talking about this weekend is Zodiac, the 2007 film. I watched this the other night and it terrified me again.
Yes, it is. It is so good. It is such a good movie. But we're talking about it because we also watched the documentary on Peacock called The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, and there's a lot to talk about, so I'm excited.
There's much to discuss, so we're going to have a good time with that. And then next week we have a cool topic. We'll bring that up next week on the Facebook page first.
Yes.
But please follow us in all the places we mentioned at the top of the show and offer us, your suggestions. We love it when you use the Annie Potts gift. We got one from Ghostbusters, but you could just be clever and use any old thing that you want. Also, Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com, The Sonia Show on Twitter, Instagram, the TikTok, Threads, all the things. You can find me there. Where can people find you, Margot?
I'm a little more complicated, y'all. Sorry about that. I'm at, for the time that it exists, I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Threads, for Instagram, and that's the name of my site. All the stuff is posted there. I'm on Twitter at Brooklyn Margot, and my TikTok is my name, Margot Donahue, and I post a lot of clips there of the movies that I'm covering for my different shows, and it's been really fun.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all. In the meantime, try to stay cool. It is a heat wave right now.
Woo.
Oy, oy, oy. Stay cool. Be safe. Pellicano is not in the mob. No way.
Not at all.
Not at all. Don't be a creep.
Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
So please keep your dick pics to yourself.